So I'll call to order the special meeting for the Setting Goals Subcommittee on July 13th, 5 p.m. Start with the agenda review. I think the only thing that we should add, as Bill suggested, is a reintroduction of all of ourselves, because it's been a month for a whole room of people who were previously strangers. So one more quick round of who we are. And other than that, any additions to the agenda? No. Okay. So we'll do the pledge first. Get into that. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So let's start over here. Just remind everybody your name, maybe the community you come from within Maple Run.
Sure, Demetrius Bolduc, and I've got 3 kids in the Fairfield Summer School.
Excellent.
I am Jessie McClure-Popchewski, and I have a son that's going to go to St Albans here.
Christy Marcus, I'm a teacher at St Albans City.
All right. Grant Henderson, I have 2 kids at St Tech.
Bill Kimball, Superintendent of Schools.
Erin Rochlow, HR Assistant.
Aaron Smith, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent.
And Ryer.
Ryan Erickson, school board member. I have 2 kids at St Albans City School.
James.
James Galloway, community member.
Okay. So we'll probably have a couple more people trickle in throughout the evening.
Yeah, we know Joanna's coming.
Yep. We don't have any visitors in the room. I don't see any visitors online. So we'll move right through that. And Bill, if you don't mind, I'm going to hand it over.
Okay.
For you to drive the meeting and put together a pretty good agenda for us. So
Yeah, Grant and I were talking.
that.
Yeah, Grant and I were talking a little bit, and I thought that to be an idea. Before I get into it, I wanted to. Erin Ruschel introduce herself as the HR assistant. She's also one of the roles she has in Maple Run is to help us with public engagement. So she's going to attend all the meetings because she'll be helping us implement what we want to implement. And so Erin, and I were talking, and we said, "Oh, this would be great to have Erin here. And that way, she's right here hearing what we're talking about and helping put that together." So, and I talked to Grant about that. I wanted all of you to know that Erin is a resource here to help. Don't feel like the whole committee's got to do everything. It's we come up with the ideas on how to drive it, and then we'll staff it. Mainly Erin, but there'll probably be some others as well.
Great.
So, Erin, thanks for joining us and being willing to help us out with this. What I wanted to do is I thought a little bit of planning with the end in mind would be a good way to start. And last time I gave you some resources to look at about the future of education. I went and found another one that I didn't give you. Doesn't mean you didn't find it, but it's from the Harvard Graduate Education School about the future of education. And what I wanted to do was have a little mini session of what it might look like as you're trying to gather information from people. You can say, Bill, that's terrible, or we like this, we don't like that, you want something different. I'm really all ears. But I thought if we did that first, then we could, in the second half of the meeting, we could get into the logistics of like, who do we want to talk to, how do we want to get the feedback, what are the questions we want to ask, and all that. So I just took the questions right out of that portrait of a graduate work. So for James and Ryer, I'm going to try to share this all on the screen. If you don't see something, stop me. But I think I'll get everything up there, and we'll just go from there. What I'm more worried about is the audio coming through from this video right now when I show the video. So we've done that before, and I remember John knew how to do. Remember, Aaron? If I go to the mic, it's just me.
Well, they sort out that team. Did everyone have a chance to look at the portrait of a graduate? And did you find the link to click through to actually see what portraits of graduate look like from other districts? They look sort of like an infographic. It's more like it's like a one-page. Let me see if I can. because that, again, working kind of with the end in mind, if that's where we want to go.
Yeah, that might be a mistake. All right.
So it's kind of buried in the portrait of a graduate.
Yeah.
I have the portrait gallery, and so every one of these is like a portrait of a graduate from a different school district,
Oh, I see.
right? And most of them are organized this way, where it's like, it's basically just a bulleted list with some nice graphics.
I just saw the one that.
So like here's an example. And so they're pretty simple, you know, but that might be a deliverable for this group. Maybe something like this as well.
Yeah, and what the video I'm about to show you is not to say it is the right portrait of what the future of education be. It's to spur your thinking. It's not to say that you need to repeat back. So I'm going to ask some questions of you afterwards. So you're going to need either your phone or a computer, or I think everyone's got a device. For James and Ryer, you'll see online where you can get right to, it's going to be a thought exchange, Ryer. I think you've been through that before. And so we're just going to use that as a way to collect these questions and then for you all to see kind of information to get to a deeper discussion. So while that's happening, I'm going to play this video.
Many of us are grappling with the feeling of simultaneously living in multiple times. There's what we used to do pre-COVID. There's what we're living through now. There's what we imagine and hope for after the pandemic subsides. And then there's what we hope for in the longer term future. But one day, this too shall pass. And though the pandemic may have in some ways set us on a new path, I'd like for us to consider not only the near future, but also decades ahead.
Our work should be to support people in seeing the world as it might be, and then helping them make those visions for what might be our new realities. Now, this is a view of the future of education that is both very present-oriented. The future isn't an abstraction. The future is happening right now. What we do every day, what we do today really matters.
I want to say I see universities working and some I would say being successful, closing the gap between access and inclusion. I see them making concerted efforts to focus as much on who they admit as they do on the experience of those who accept the invitations to be members of their community. This requires expanding our thinking about what matters in college, especially moving beyond quantifiable outcomes to understand more about the how students are moving through higher education.
Ongoing automation of white-collar jobs with the rise of artificial intelligence. I hope that's going to mean growing emphasis in schools on the social and emotional skills that are distinctively human, and as research by our colleague Dave Deming shows, are increasingly rewarded in the labor market. Counterintuitively, it could also mean a greater supply of teachers as other options for college-educated adults dry up. And one of the things we've seen in the pandemic is that there's no real automated substitute for a personal relationship with a teacher.
And I mean, I think the disruption of this past year has opened up the possibility for real and radical change in the next 25 years. I think we'll be seeing more relevant, representative, and historically accurate curriculum, something our students have been demanding, I think, for years. I think we are going to see more humanizing instructional designs that are responsive to the interests, talents, needs of the real people in schools, right? Both our students and the teachers who work with them.
And I believe that the events of the past 8 months are leading us down a path that centers and prioritizes issues of ethnic racial equity in our schools. And if I follow that line of thinking, I think that in 25 years, I see an education system that's going to be prioritizing students' ethnic racial identity development as a competency that's nurtured, supported, and integrated into school curricula. I also see an educator workforce that is representative in terms of ethnic racial background of the students who are being served. I envision a system in which we're investing in our educators by providing them with training and the time that they need to grow in their own understanding of their ethnic, racial inequities, and their ethnic racial identities, and how to create culturally sustaining environments in which all students will thrive. And when I think about those changes, I think we'll be pleased with where education will be in 25 years. And I think that
Thanks, Aaron. And then
sharing.
I wanted to share that other one that reimaginates all the way to the right. And just that one.
I'd like to talk today about 5 ideas for innovating in K-12 education, hoping that it will lead to more learning among all students in all parts of the world. The first idea is that we should all recognize that learning takes place not just in schools, but beyond, and that the industrial model of schooling that we're all so used to is ill-suited for the kinds of societies and communities that we live in today, and that our students will face in the future. So I would question why we need to continue grouping students by age, expecting them to cover the same material at the same time and assess them all at the same end of a certain period, hoping that they will all have gained the same skills. And we now know from the learning sciences that each individual has a different style of learning, has different interests, and also that these interests vary by subject and that they don't learn at the same pace. So why not allow schools to come in and assess students at where they are and adapt the learning opportunities to individually so that each learner can learn throughout their own trajectory. I think we have the resources to do that in terms of the knowledge that we need, and we also can leverage technology, and that's my second idea. So with my colleagues Alejandro Ganinian from New York University and Rick Hess from American Enterprise Institute, we have a forthcoming report with the purpose of guiding decision makers to realize the potential of education technology for accelerating student learning. We argue that there are 4 comparative advantages of education that can really support the work of teachers, complement and expand their reach. The first one is scaling quality instruction. So we know that there are many great teachers around the world. However, not one great teacher is great at every subject, and not every child has access to a great teacher. Yet if we could use technology to bring the best teachers and the best subjects to all students, we could accelerate learning. The second potential area where we feel technology has a comparative advantage to play in accelerated student learning is in facilitating differentiated instruction. As I said earlier, every learner has an own learning style, learning pace, and no matter how great a teacher is, in classrooms of 15 to 50 students or more, it is very difficult to tailor instruction to each individual learner. Technology can help in this regard too, and today there are many software programs that allow assessing students at their level and tailoring opportunities for learning to differentiate and meet them where they are. The third great way in which we believe technology can enhance the student experience and learning opportunities is by expanding opportunities for students to practice concepts that they have learned or that they need to really cement. We know that it's not the same to just listen to a lecture, even if it's a great lecture, and really understand deeply the concepts. So it's very important for students to have ample opportunities to practice, and technology can provide those. Finally, the fourth comparative advantage of technology is that it can, through games and through videos, increase student engagement in ways that a single lecture cannot. And so we hope that by shifting the way in which we use EdTech in classrooms and beyond, we can leverage its potential to accelerate student learning. The third idea for redesigning K-12 education is to recognize the value that the education workforce and the education and schools as institutions have, not only to provide learning opportunities, but also for socio-emotional development, and also for many other services that communities need, including allowing parents to continue working from outside the home. This will require also that educators have a new role in which they leverage technology, in which they facilitate learning, and they're not the sole providers of content. So I hope that as a society, having seen firsthand in light of the school closures, the efforts that parents have had to make at home to help their students through their distance learning opportunities, that we will revalue the work that teachers and educators do throughout the education system, and not only by rewarding them financially, but also by revaluing their work in society and for the progress of our communities. The fourth important change that I'd like to see in education systems is that schools should focus on a breadth of skills, not just on the traditional subjects and foundational skills, but really on what we call 21st century skills of creativity and problem solving, analytical thinking. Because students tomorrow, and already today, will not only need to read and write and know science and know history, but they'll need to be able to apply these concepts and these subjects to real world problems and to be creative. And these skills can and are being learned in excellent schools, but this needs to be the rule and not the exception. And finally, and I think a very important aspect of how I'd like to see K-12 education evolve is to give more attention and resources to those learners who have the least at home. COVID has laid bare the incredible structural inequalities that exist not only across countries but within countries. The education is the great lever to ease these inequalities. But we also know that we're going to be living in times of fiscal restraints, and that even in the best of times, resources in education were never sufficient. And so making an explicit decision as a society to allocate limited resources, whether they're just financial, but also the best teachers, the best technology, to those students who need the most, will be an important factor to move us to where we need to go in this next phase.
So if you stop sharing for a minute here. So what I want to do is ask all of us 3 questions. Ask everyone 3 questions. And I'm going to tell you what the questions are. And because we're smaller, and this is what I'm wondering, if we're a bigger group, I definitely would want to use thought exchange, because it's a way for people just to put up ideas and then rank them. And that's what I'm going to try that with the first question, and then we won't do that with the last 2. I'm trying to get this short. So the first question that I'm going to ask, if I can get to thought, let's see if it's going to work from here. It's working so far. Good. Come on. It was working. But yeah, just go on and go to the thought exchange. So you're going to need either a phone or a tablet or something. We'll project it right now so James and Ryer, you can see it. So if you go to that thought exchange, that one right there, this first question is, what are your community's hopes, dreams, and aspirations for every student? So what you can do, Aaron's about to share that screen. There's a QR code on there, so if you have a QR code reader on your phone, you can get the QR code and it'll take you right to the survey. You can go to tjoin.com and put in that 9-number code. And then what you'll do is it will ask you that question. And you put in one idea, like, what are your hopes, dreams, and aspirations for every student? I may say, I want every student to be creative. And then I might have another idea about problem solving or literate. And once you put a few in, you can start to rank them. And you rank them by 5 stars, which ones you like and you agree. So And so once you're in there, you just have to go through some next and accepting the privacy. So like right now, there's 6 participants in, there's been 1 thought so far. It's a little behind. And so what I was, Aaron, I was gonna start the timer coming up there. Just push the play button to the right of it. It's kind of above the little zoom capture. And so when you'll see in here, when you see you put in a couple of thoughts, you can go to ranking and then you can come back and add other thoughts too if you want. So when on the bottom, you'll see the thought, there's a start sharing or share more. And start ranking or share more. And you can rank some more things up there. And the great thing about this is after we start seeing some ratings, okay, so we have 7 thoughts and 14 rankings. And I'm pretty sure after the rating you can come back. And it's hard sometimes to give everything, and you want to give everything like a high ranking. You want to vary your rankings. Even though you might agree with all of them, you might just. So it's great. We're getting like 15 thoughts, 33 rankings. We've got like another 2 or 3 minutes of this. And we'll then go and look at this. It's awesome. You guys are doing great. So see the little ratio that's in the, all the way almost to the right. So there's the countdown. We're getting a high ratio of thoughts to ratings, which is great. Almost up to 4 for every thought.
So start rating now.
You can start rating, yep. Once you put some thoughts in rating, and I just was trying to figure out with my phone. I know how to do it on my computer, but it's how you go back. Oh yeah, I can down at the bottom after I can go to the share thoughts if I thought of a new thought after you. Sometimes after you rate them by just clicking on the stars. So if you just touch the star, that's what gives it the rating. Yeah, like if you like that, you just touch the number of stars you want. So kind of like the thoughts have subsided, the rankings are still going, so we'll let it go a little bit longer. These thoughts just came in. All right, so everyone had a chance to add and rate some. We don't need to keep, I think 5 minutes was a little long. Ryder and James, how are you guys doing? See Ryder, they're both thumbs up, good. Okay, so
Yeah, real good.
what we're gonna do here is we need to go up here and change this. If you go up to, you go over to the exchanges to the one in the middle, go 1 to the left of where we're in there. And if you go to the hopes and dreams, click on, see that box that says hopes and dreams? This is where knowing it. I want you to go over to where it says Discover Dashboard right here and click on that. So if you go to the word cloud up top, this is a way of analyzing what you just all put in here. So if you go to the word cloud, it's over here on the left-hand side. All right. So you can kind of see, just you all know how Wordle works. The bigger the word, the more response was in all the thoughts. So that's just kind of one way of looking at it. If you go up again in that left-hand menu and go to thoughts. So these are the ratings of how you all rated them, the averages of what you rated. So the highest rated thought was be creative problem solvers. The next one was for our students to be exposed to various cultures, ideas, careers, and opportunities outside our community. What we're going to do, and I'm going to have you do it slowly, but it's a little bit pan through this kind of slow so people can see just some of these rating scales a little bit so people can read them and see the thoughts. There's another way of sharing this with everybody as well at the same time. I'm just trying to cut corners a little bit here to not take the whole meeting. It's okay. And then just have a minute to read what's being said in the rankings that are there. And then Aaron, if you can go back to the word cloud, we're just gonna, we don't need to go down through all of them, but we'll go back to the word cloud just to kind of see that again. And if we were all in this room, I would just leave that word cloud up. But I want to be able to see James and Ryer at the same time. So we'll stop sharing. Oh, we can see them right there, that's good. And what I'd ask from looking at this word cloud, looking at those rankings, what do you guys think? What do you think you're saying as a group are some of the most important hopes, dreams, and aspirations that we have for our students?
We want our students to be safe.
We want our kids to have expanded minds to see things in different perspectives.
There's a lot of soft skills out there. I didn't see math, science, language arts, right? You see, ways of, kind of, living in community or, functioning, but not necessarily a set of skills that we tend to associate with specific curriculum.
Others?
I think education is changing from my generation to this current generation. So it's no longer about the soft skills of reading, writing, math. Those are now given, but now they need to learn how to apply it a different way than we ever did.
And I think we've also identified that if we don't engage those soft skills, you're not going to see improvement or success.
You need that foundation needs to be there no matter what.
In those book skills.
I just have a question. Is there an assumption? I mean, I concur with the thinking, but is that based off an assumption on our part that they have mastered the arts or the math, the English, history?
The second question might help you get there. There's three questions here. I'm doing it in this order deliberately because the next question is what skills and mindsets. And we would do it through thought exchange because I want to use this tool to collect the data that we get from multiple sessions, right? So we can aggregate it a lot easier. James was honest about how to collect data and how to use it quickly. So this tool will really, James, I hope you see the power of it. I'd be glad to do an individual session with you about how to really get into some qualitative, it has AI in it, and how we can use it to really gather qualitative data and quickly make some sense of it.
Yeah, definitely, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the next question, which I would have you talk about, are what skills and mindsets do students need to thrive in our ever-changing world? That's the second question. I'll say it again, and I'm not going to put us into a thought exchange just because of time. I see where we are already. What skills and mindsets do students need to thrive in our ever-changing world? So that we might get into the math, literacy, social and emotional knowledge. And the third question that I would go after that, and those first two really go at what's the what we want students to know and be able to do. This third question is what are the implications for learning in equitable structures and practices in our schools? That's more about how we do our work. So those would be the three questions that we'd be asking folks to kind of brainstorm on. And I can send you all these questions. I didn't put it in the agenda, but I can give it all to you. Yeah.
Can you just repeat that one?
Yeah. What are the implications for learning, equitable structures, and practices in our schools?
And that one comes right out of Porter Graduate.
All three of these, I edited
That's
a little
what I
bit.
recognize.
All three of these, I edited a little bit from a portrait of a graduate, and they're going after it to be able, the first two, if you know what you want kids to be able to know and be able to do, you can probably stop sharing here. It helps to get you to a vision. And if you know how we want to do our work, it tells us about our mission.
So, I don't know what else, the third one, the reason I recognized it from corporate graduate is I struggled with it when I read it to really figure out what it meant. If the idea is that we're gonna take these three and propose them, to a larger audience, I think that would maybe need some work.
And that's great, and I think that's what I'm looking for feedback from all of you, because I'm putting this together, and I'm not saying it has to be the way I'm giving you a place to start the conversation. And we'll make sure by tomorrow or the next day you have these questions in an email. I haven't been one that I outlined to Grant already, just saying. I don't think those are the best videos I could have used. They were just ones, I wanted ones different than what I gave you. I gave you what I knew that was really good. So it's just a way of starting to, you have to kind of see the thinking of a group if you have a group together. It could be listening to something, it could be watching something. It's just a way of getting people kind of thinking future education futures. So that's my little model of what it looks, what it might look like, so that we could talk about how we get there. Thoughts, reactions, reflections.
And you think there was going to trip people up because we're actually talking about reforming the way education is done? And it's such a leap of thought for even people who are in the education system to do, and it's much harder when we're separate from the education system to make this assumption how we're going to restructure education. Because literally we're talking about overhauling the way education is done from 20th century is going to now.
That might be a tricky question also for some stakeholders, without prior knowledge, I think.
It's not accessible to all people. I mean, it's the issue with exactly what the question is.
Right. Right.
I don't know about anyone else. Whenever I see the videos, when someone's watched the area, so my initial reaction to those, I think, is common. I think it's something that a lot of people feel when they see something like this. It's a change and it's uncomfortable, and so it comes at you very fast because you're trying to understand, both where the presenter's coming from, and where they're going, but also at the same time challenging, everything that you think you know, and trying to reconcile that. And you get lost very quickly because you get focused on some small aspect of your own personal experience that they've just challenged, and then you miss the next 10, 20 seconds of what they're saying while you try to reconcile whether or not that actually makes sense and compare it back to your own experience. So I think that's going to be a challenge, especially considering that, I don't know if anyone else had that experience as well, but I'm set up for it, right? I know it's coming, and I still have that reaction. And we're also kind of, referring this, and I think everyone here wants to be not necessarily part of change, but part of optimization at least of what's already out there. So you're here to make progress, and you're still, or at least I'm still looking at this stuff and really trying to think deeply while there's a lot of information coming out.
I think there's been, like, throughout the videos of the meeting, there's a lot of great suggestions or information available. I think as an educator, it's overwhelming. And I took it as, wow, there's so many great ideas. And one of the videos from Sir Ken Robinson, and then I don't know if it was the second video we watched, how they were talking about not putting kids in a grade based on their age, and that was something that really stuck out to me. And I think it's overwhelming. Well,
that's an idea I think where you might lose people, right?
Right.
Like people will go, wait, no, that's radical.
Right.
So I think we have to temper it a little bit.
Of course.
And it may just be not getting so much into how as getting into, if all we get to is that worker or graduate, and then we leave it up to the administration and the board or whoever else to figure out the how, that might be good enough. I don't know.
Well, and I think it's important to look at, like, we want this systematic change for what's best for students, but I think there's also that foundation that a lot of our students are missing. So we talked about being safe, but a lot of our kids don't have the support at home. They don't have access to mental health services. So I think there's also this foundational piece that some of our students are missing. So while all of these ideas are fantastic, I think we need to take a little bit of time or give space to those foundational skills, those social emotional skills that a lot of our kids don't have, especially post-COVID.
I was away right after school and I went out to the Pacific Northwest and I was at this place. I met this woman and she is a young black woman who is, it's really cool. She has her own, it's a website or she does it on YouTube, I think, but it's called the Fab Lab. And she does a lot of science. It's all science-based curriculum. It's all linked up with gen eds and whatever, and is available to teachers. And she and I were having a conversation, and she asked me, "What do you think I could do to really kind of meet more needs of the teachers? Right? Like, what could I do to help them more? I feel like I'm doing what I can do as far as kids and the curriculum and whatnot, but how could I make it, better?" And I really kind of paused with that one as I was about to go to BEST, which is it's our PBIS. It's all about social emotional learning. The next week I was going to a training, and I thought about implementing vocabulary, social emotional vocabulary into science, right? So you're talking about, give me an idea. You're talking about
Cell structure.
What's that?
Cell structure.
Cell structure, okay. You could, what's that?
Ecology.
Ecology. And then you talk about, interconnectedness, and you can talk about empathy, and you can talk about, you're talking about, whatever, just like implementing social emotional vocabulary into science. And I was like this, in my brain and in hers, we were having this really great conversation. And as much as it can be overwhelming, I think, for teachers, I think that there is a way to approach this that doesn't have to be so overwhelming and so insanely, transformingly, at first. I think that we can find ways to implement those, for creativity, curiosity, initiative, multidisciplinary thinking, and empathy. I think there's ways that we can do that I'm sorry, where we're already learning, where we're already teaching. I just think that we haven't thought about it in that way or through that lens yet. And so I hear you that it's not for us to think about the why, but if some of our stakeholders are educators, and they're not going to be able to find why for 1 second. So it's going to be really, that's going to be a really challenging conversation, but I just think it would be important for us to like look at this through different lenses and just see the multiple ways that we can incorporate this in kind of exciting ways.
There might be different ways to gather the input that you want for different audiences. So for example, I think I said this last time, but the Essex Westford District, when they were doing this, they had students go around at a community fair with a board and said, what are 4 words that describe success for students for you? And literally just kept writing down the words and then threw it into a word. Because that was easy for someone to respond to. So this is why the questions that you were saying, Grant, like I'm not sure about that question. It may be that there are different questions, still getting at the same question, but asked differently so different folks can connect with it to get what we want. And that's why I was, by thinking about this, if we have another meeting on the 10th, is where we can really start to solidify how we want to do this, but to get your heads into thinking, this is exactly the conversation you're like. So how do we do this to get the information we want and to be able to use that information?
I think it's important to also pause and think about who does get freaked out by this conversation and who doesn't, right? So I think people in your world would be less freaked out by this conversation, a little bit less freaked out by this, because they're always having to change and pivot and be flexible with how they do things and to be more successful in the business world. And so that's going to be a good lesson for us, and to be thinking about who we can lean on, for that extra support to make those changes, or to gather ideas to make those changes.
So Bill, I think just circling back, I think the point of the exercise was both to get us thinking about the actual content of the questions, right?
Yeah.
But also to get some feedback on that exercise as something that we could actually put out there during a community engagement session, right? And so maybe some feedback on that. Is it a good way to get that community feedback? Do people feel that it was appropriate, would be well accepted by some groups that we might be talking to? Is it doesn't deep enough? Is it too deep? That type of feedback on this.
So I'm gonna, just not to interrupt or anything, but I think, it's a good point that we're making here and kind of directing our attention to what the actual, what the work is that we're doing as this group, right? So our group is working on an aspirational project, right? We're not working on a pedagogical project. I would dare say that the community and the Department of Education might actually frown upon us trying to work upon a pedagogical project in this way, right? We're setting aspirational goals for the community, for our school system, discussing it in a way where we hope to get there, and then the nuts and bolts will have to, they have to align with the nesting dolls of policies and laws and pedagogy, right? Some of the aspirations are pipe dreams. Like, I know some of these videos talk about, do we want kids, learning at the same age, the same things? Well, that's not really within our boundaries. We can't really change that too much. There's not too many waivers we can pull to make sure that like 9th graders are doing no math if they feel like it, right? That's not a thing. So I think just identifying that the role of this subcommittee is aspirational, and that some of the pedagogical stuff just necessarily has to happen outside of this group.
Yeah, Bill, maybe a good time to draw it back to sort of the role of the board.
Yeah.
And how the actual logistics of this will work out.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, I'll take my stab at my understanding of it, and then you can correct me at any point. But yeah, James, you're exactly right. So we're going to provide, through feedback of the community, through this discussion amongst ourselves, a recommendation to the board. around a deliverable. I think we get to define
Yeah.
to some degree. It can be an actual like left-hand portrait of a graduate type of thing. It can look potentially like a mission statement. It could look like a lot of different things. We have to figure out what that is that we want to propose. But what the board will do is they'll take that, and I don't even know if we get to necessarily adopt that as policy somehow.
The
right?
board will adopt it as policy somehow.
And so whatever we present has to be able to like fit into a policy framework. And then once it's policy, it'll be up to the administration to figure out how to proceduralize it and administer it. And that is the how of this gets done. If that wound up being there are no more grade levels, and the administration could pull that off, and they thought that was the best way to go, they would, I believe have the support of the board, with a proposal even if it was extreme like that. I don't think that's where it's going to go. But I think that's more or less.
I think it's more, I think that's there. I want to talk something, James, to what you talked about with regulation. In Vermont, James, we have 7 core proficiencies that are in the state of Vermont. And 6 of them are content-based, and 1 of them is the transferable skills. So problem solving, creative thinking, I'm gonna lose all 6 that go into that one off the top of my head. Yeah, of course, communication, so like I know I'm gonna repeat. So just there, I can get you all of that. Vermont's curricular standards are actually really broad, and there is no scope and sequence in the state of Vermont that's required. So I'm not asking you, this group, and I actually, as a superintendent, don't want to ask you to come in and do a lot of the how, but if you said, one of our current mission statement talks about all students. So all, it says so all, it doesn't have the word student after it, so all can learn, achieve, and succeed. And so if there was a piece in there about all, a way of ensuring all learners and giving equitable access and the supports every student needs, that's part of the how. So if that came in there, I'm not saying that is what you're going to say, but I'm just trying to give you that. Like I would want the how of like how we structure the internal structures of the school. I agree with everything you said. Grant, I think this committee has that piece because one of the things I've been asking for the board is what are the goals and aspirations of the school system, and that really, for me, there's an extension question. What is that of the community? What's the community want for the kids? And I think everyone's been educated. That's one of the great things about education, and it's one of the poor things about education is that everyone's gone through education. And so, whether good, bad, or indifferent to the actual education they had, to them it was good because they've gotten to where they're at, usually. Not everyone, but most people. That's been my experience in 25 years in the profession. So I think that that's part of getting to the work we're trying to do. And then it's trying to figure out how does this committee get some feedback, some input into what those thoughts and ideas are, and then structure a way to synthesize that, put that together, and come together with a statement.
So to kind of take that mindset, come back to the activity that we just did, right? And then we're back to, at some point we have to engage the community, right? And this was one tool that we could use for that. So I think as a committee, we should probably decide whether or not we like that tool. And then I don't know if we need to go into as much detail around what the questions really ought to be at this meeting.
No, I think we can do that at the next
That
meeting.
feels like a next.
So I'll send out the questions.
Right.
I'll send out, I'll basically take what I sent you as an annotated agenda, just send it to everybody, because the reason I didn't share that ahead of time is I wanted you to kind of come in without knowing the experience of what it was going to be. But to have you have all the notes from it, you're more than welcome to have all the notes. And then what I did is I think you all got a piece that was, Aaron, this one out to everybody. Was it this sheet that had the different pieces, timeline?
Just the ones that we put together.
Okay. So I started to put together a timeline document that I'll send out to you after this as well, which is just like, how do we design what groups do we invite? I really need to employ, there's some really necessary groups, I don't think we forget them, but faculty, having something for faculty at every school. If the faculty and the administration's not on board with this process, we're not gonna move forward, I just have to tell you that. And I have to say it that declaratively. Board members, students, parents, business leaders, community, we talked about this last time. How do we receive feedback? You don't have to just do it one way, the way I showed you. I can go find a survey that does that about what are your hopes and dreams. That's a Google search, they're out there. We'll want a lot of questions, but there's things like that. And you could have individual interviews with certain people you want to invite. So you can have invited sessions, and that's actually one of the things I was talking about. And then when to conduct the sessions, how you want to process it. I kind of made an assumption that I think is probably too much of an assumption, but some sort of forum where you can bring a bunch of people together to look at maybe those 3 separate ideas and say coalesce around all that data that you saw in Thought Exchange, and be able to say, well, what does that mean to us? What do we think that means? What would we say for a statement if someone said, what are the skills that kids need? What are the mindsets they need to have once they get a BFA diploma? What are our hopes and dreams for them? And then I started to put together a timeline. I put together an empty timeline that just started to think out, when are these different things happening to collect from different people? And I'll get you all that this week. And then just trying to get us to a December 1st ending time. It was pretty quick and fast. So, and that I can have so we can really kind of talk to that. It was more of a checklist piece, so we could just use it almost as a worksheet to fill in as to when.
Right. So we're coming up on time for this evening. We got through the thought exchange, right? Does anyone feel like that's not a good tool?
I actually think it's a great tool because it's really brief, fast. It kind of feels like social media type thing. So I think people will engage in it a lot better than a survey because surveys are daunting.
Yep.
And that's just the like you're studying. It's a very fast, easy thing to do.
And I think it's like you can see the results.
So they stated.
And I think people doing surveys like to see that sort of stuff.
Okay. So at our next meeting, let's see, you touched on a lot there in the last run through. I think part of that is going to be identifying the groups that we want to engage with, and I think also tailoring thought exchange questions to the groups, right?
Yeah.
Which is
And the thought exchange, if you want to use that as an online tool, I can embed it where you have to watch the video first, and then you get the question.
I was gonna say, having some information preceding it to just to get.
So if you said we really like this video, or we want people to read this, I can embed that. I can make splash pages ahead of it. And it says, before you go on to the questions, you have to do this. And you can also say, are you a parent, are you a student, we have up to 10 10 multiple choice questions. So you can kind of know who's answering, not the individual, because it's anonymous, but what they represent. In other words, their demographics.
Are we going to use the outline of Portrait of a Graduate in terms of, the different stakeholder groups?
We could, yeah, and that graphic that you're looking at, right, Joanna, was the one for making up like this committee. So the tactic for this committee is like we're already at step 3.
Okay.
Because we've made the committee.
Yep.
So step 1 and 2 have already been done. Get the buy-in that we need to do it. We did that with the board and the administrators. The next one was that graphic around is like how do you compose the committee. We've done that. So now we're at that, all right, so now how do we start gathering some information so then the committee can take that information and start to propose whatever it looks like.
Well, I don't know that we've hit all of those areas even in this committee, so I would propose to utilize.
Yeah, to look at that list, so we can add to that list from the portrait.
And then I think we also have to decide what the actual deliverable this for this group at some point. And we've left that open-ended.
Yeah.
On purpose.
Yeah.
We could also bring that up with the board if we want, give some examples of what potential deliverables could be. But I do think we need to decide that probably sooner rather than later, so we know where we're going.
That might be, as you were saying, because people were walking in, Grant was looking at some of the portrait of graduate work.
Yeah.
But I could show some other school systems where they've taken, like, you know, your 3 goals, and each goal you could say is one word, and they've embedded that in their vision.
Right.
Like, we want kids to be creative, thinkers, and I'm just trying to remember some that I've seen. And without using the word successful, because that gets too generic and how do you define it? They're trying to define what it is, and those 3 are goal areas, and they make up into what you get out of all of this work.
I like that idea too, because it allows, I guess, the board to, or, I don't know, yeah, instead of board, to hone in on those, the mission, I guess, the mission and vision for you to come up with the goals. Right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get stuck on the writing, I don't want to, get stuck on the details of the writing of it, because I think that's where people can spend hours and hours, getting lost in that. But more of the essence of the ideas of what to incorporate, and then to bring that to the board.
Yeah, if you Google portrait of a graduate, you'll find dozens of examples, and none of them are heavy on any sort of text. They're all bullet lists.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, in high school, if you had a teacher that did a short answer, and you knew that all she was really looking for was the words, and you just write out words, right? That's kind of what it's like.
But those are the ways you set up the goals.
Yes.
You said, one of the things we're trying to get back to with what the title is, what are our aspirations for the school district, and how we make sure they're
Yes, exactly. But it's a guiding document, right? These are core versions or something along those lines, right?
So what I have for next time, Grant, is I'm going to get out an outline, the outline that I have here that I read from. I'm going to get out all the questions, and I'll give the annotated agenda that I did for tonight's meeting, so you can all see it to kind of think about this process. The other thing is I put up in resources. This is a book, and you can see it's heavily tabbed. I've used it a lot based on my work in the past. It's called Public Participation in 21st Century Democracy. And it's a book about how do you get public process. And Aaron put up in the resources 2 PowerPoints that establish 2 chapters. We put up some of the readings, and then after looking through the PowerPoints, it was like, oh, the PowerPoints are easier for everyone to digest than the academic, because this is a pretty academic book. But they have some really good ideas about if you want this type of information from the community, it's actually in the chapter 8 one, you want to do this type of a task. So you might want to look at it, there's some nice charts in there about whether you want people just to inform you, collaborate with you, actually have a chance to make a decision for you. So there's different things we can do to get that. And so I thought that was a helpful resource for all of you to have. Brian, James, I'm sorry if I just keep forgetting to look at you over there. That everyone can kind of look at and say what might be the way we want to get used to gather that information.
So do you have other books, like there's a whole slew of books in the portrait of a graduate?
Yeah.
Do you have a lending library that?
I don't have many of those books. That there are a lot of books in there. What I have, I can get you a lot of articles that aren't in there, but that talk about that futures of education piece.
I was just curious if you had any.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have to look at the list again.
Okay.
Some of them I knew. There's a lot of it. I mean, in the work that I do, in my work, I have a lot about future of education. It seems to be grading something once a week for articles. So that's what I would ask as people next time look at this. I'll send you those pieces and disperse some thoughts and this outline that I have for us that's making kind of a worksheet of how to get us to the next step.
Does anybody else have anything to add about next steps?
Can I make a suggestion on that?
Yeah.
When we're asking folks if they have a next step, maybe we could even do it in the form of a thought exchange exchange, but provide an opportunity for everybody to write something down and send that in. Because some people, I wish I didn't speak as much as I did tonight. I was excited about the information and sharing tonight, but it also probably quiets others. And so maybe just having an opportunity for other people to be able to write stuff down and submit if they're not feeling like talking out loud.
And the only thing I would add would be that if it does seem like we're going kind of down thought exchange route, or at least with that kind of guiding question answer session type of situation, consider the when Billy sent out the email, you can identify some groups. That move it up. So if you guys could think about the various groups that we want to engage and how those questions might look for those various groups. Right? I think that would put us quite a bit ahead for the next session too.
Yeah, I think for Erica, who's not here as an educator, but for Cindy, Joy and I had to think about the different age levels of kids. And I think, how would you want to ask the kids? Because they're part of this.
All right. So we're through our agenda. If there's no additional comments, questions for the committee, suggestions. Going once, going twice. All right.
I'm sorry.
No.
That's fine.
Then we're adjourned.
It'd be August 10th, I believe, is the next time we're together.
At 5.
At 5. You were saying, I enjoy the 5. James, send me an email. Let's see if we can find time. I'll show you thought exchange. I think
Sounds good.
I think you'll like it.